Bismillah wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers and listeners. Welcome to another episode of the Middle West podcast. Sorry,
I don't like the accent. No.
Basically, Thaqib's away, so I'm basically filling in. And I thought maybe if I start off with an American accent and then phase it into a British one, then our listeners can become more familiar.
Well, you said viewers as well. There's no one viewing anything.
That's true.
We're viewing each other, aren't we? So.
Yeah. SubhanAllah.
Before we start insulting each other, let me introduce our esteemed guest. We are joined by the one and only Imam.
Imam and Sheikh.
I want you to do this because Asad, this is like your
Imam.
We're in your ends.
Imam and Sheikh Al-A'lama
Maulana
Mir-Azam Khan. How are you today?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, I'm fine. Jazakallah for having me here.
If just because we haven't got any actual viewers, there's a thing I want to mention about the dress code of our dear friend here.
Oh, mashallah.
SubhanAllah. He actually has a lot of drip, as they like to say in the streets.
Expecting a camera, that's why.
If we did have a camera, then hopefully we'll take a picture at the end of the podcast together, and you can see the drip in flesh.
Like I literally walk into the masjid and I see Sheikh and I'm thinking, wow, like am I back in Pakistan? Or,
I like it because I remember when I first met you, you used to wear the jalaba as well and the turban.
Yeah,
very, very Swazi.
Still wear it. I've got one. Well, it was here.
Oh, very nice.
So this is for Jumas and any other sort of commitments. So,
nice.
So I try to, because it's quite cold, so wear something a bit.
Yes, for the
this is why an imam needs an office.
That's what I'm saying for the listeners. We are sitting in the imam's office, so he's just pulled a hat out. Yeah. He don't just pulled it out from his jacket or anything. He's come from the office.
I actually got one in my pocket.
Oh wow! He actually does have a hat.
He actually has a hat in his pocket. Wow, SubhanAllah.
Mashallah.
Always equipped.
Yes, you have to be ready.
Mashallah. We have to be ready in the cold that is the north of England, and we are currently in Rochdale, alhamdulillah. And and to be honest, of all the masjids, what am I saying of all the masjids? Basically, I was really surprised when I first heard the masjid's name, like Nili Masjid. I'm just thinking, okay, it's just a random name. And then I came into the mosque, and then first and foremost, there's a blue dome. And then I walked in.
Two blue domes.
Okay, sorry, my bad. It's two blue domes.
Okay.
And then I walk in, and everything is blue. The carpets are all blue. Yeah. The even the curtains, the blinds, the chairs I'm sitting on, it's all blue. Exactly. Yeah. I'm like, that's why it's called Nili Masjid, because actually it's blue.
I don't know who came up with that, to be honest with you. Where did that come from?
Traditionally, it was just two houses, which got demolished, and then I think the domes came from Poland. Believe it or not,
Poland.
They were made in Poland. Yeah,
okay.
So
Mashallah.
they were imported from.
What
Poland.
do they think? They were making a church dome or something? Yeah, we'll make a church dome, a blue one, fantastic.
Glass domes, full glass. There's two. There's a small dome and there's a bigger dome, and there's a minaret.
If you go to the third floor, actually the second floor. If you go to the second floor, the dome, if you look at it, it's the roof. So if you could walk into the masalla and you look up, the domes are there.
It's see-through.
It's see-through. Yes. We can show you later on, inshallah.
Yeah.
But,
that would be lovely.
Yeah.
But it's nice. It's a very beautiful masjid. So thank you for actually welcoming us to this masjid. And I mean, first and foremost, we'd like to know a bit more about yourself. Maybe just introduce yourself to the viewers. Yeah. Sorry, listeners. Listeners.
Alhamdulillah. So I'm one of the imams here at Nili Masjid. I've been here for approximately 2 years. Prior to that, I was in North Wales.
Okay.
So Mashallah. I was there I'm born and bred in North Wales, but I've travelled.
So you don't have the accent?
No, alhamdulillah.
Wow.
But I can.
Alhamdulillah.
I can get.
You can put it on.
I can put it on sometimes. Yeah. when I'm with Welsh people.
Okay, fair
naturally enough. Comes.
It's like me. I was born in Birmingham, so when I was Brummie,
I've never heard you with Brummie accent.
Yeah, because no one's a
Brummie.
No one's a Brummie around me. I like to keep my distance with him.
Mashallah. So, can you speak Welsh?
Yeah, I speak Welsh. So
really?
That's why the accent is still there.
Boreda.
Nosda. It's Nosda now. So Nosda means.
Welsh is a weird language. The first time I heard
Plaid Cymru.
Yes,
that's like only things I know.
Plaid Cymru, Zindabad. They're very nationalist, the Plaid Cymru. I mean, we used to have the council reps visiting the masjid. So I was in a mosque in Bangor, North Wales.
Okay.
And so it was a change from Bangor, from a mixed community, to predominantly Pakistani Asian communities. Alhamdulillah, it was a good change, and I moved here in 2018. Previously I was imam I was part-time imam at Bangor for about 5 years. Still have some family there. I still travel up and down to Wales whenever I need to. Yeah, so Imamate, that's my full-time job. Not much to say.
But if you had a Wikipedia page and then and there was a tab called Early Life, how would you describe that?
So early life.
That's a nice question, though.
Yeah. So my early studies involved hifz of Quran from the age of 10.
In Wales?
So I left Wales to study in a madrasa locally in Manchester, in Bury.
Oh, Darul
Bury. So I was there for about 3 years.
Oh, nice.
So my father sent me because there was no madaris in the locality. So that was the first sort of, if you can say, the exposure to Islamic sciences was the hifz and the tajweed. And then I moved on to Nottingham to do my Alamiya course, to start off my Alamiya course, which I did 3 years in Nottingham. Then I travelled to Syria in '99.
Which was fine back then.
Which was fine back then. Yeah, there was none of the issues that we see nowadays.
Where did you go in Syria?
Damascus.
How was it?
It was very good, mashallah.
How long were you there for?
There for a year.
A year.
A year. So we were there '99. It was Ramadan '99. It was really a beautiful country. It still is a beautiful country. The people were really hospitable, and it was a centre of learning. We had students from America, from UK, from Pakistan, believe it or not. And they were all studying Arabic, they were studying fiqh, hadith, qira'at. It was really a center for qira'at in the masjid in Umawi. They used to have classes on a daily basis. So then I came back from Syria in 2000. I had to come back for personal reasons. Then I restarted my Alamiya, finished it off in 2004. Visited.
Where did you do that?
So it was in Kuliya in south of Wales. Believe it or not, yeah, it was. It's the Kuliya has actually closed down. It's not there anymore. But it was a part of the same Kuliya that we have in France. EI.
Oh yes,
European Institute for Human Sciences. Yeah, so it was. I studied there for about 3 years.
They've got one in Birmingham as well, haven't they?
Yes, Birmingham, London. France is the main one.
It's like really out of the way, isn't it, in France?
In France, it is very rural.
Chateau.
It's, mashallah, we had.
Is that a place where people go to like do Hifd al-Quran and that kind of
stuff? Islamic studies, Islamic science. They actually have a BA program, master's program. Very well organised institute that we have in France. So they opened up a sister branch here in Wales, which it ran for about 10 years, but then the students were not there. So they opened up a branch in Birmingham, London. And we have something similar in Oldham, on the similar sort of lines. We have EIIS, which is again very similar to what we had. And then since the time of 2004, 2005, I worked for a little while. I had my own business, my own shop. Then I went back to studying with Sheikh Akram. So the Alamiya, the Takhasus, I finished off in mid 2000. But I'm still on the path of knowledge. Never ceases, never finishes. If you believe that you've mastered everything, well, that's when you've actually failed in your quest for acquiring pure knowledge. And so they have to have the right niyyah, right ikhlas. And it's the ulama. They always continue studying. No one's completed a PhD or.
So when you were doing all this, what did you have in your head as a kind of goal or like end kind of goal?
Yeah. So Imamate was not on my mind at that time. It was just study hard, get the sciences, get to know the sciences, the Arabic, the basic Arabic, the Takhasus. And then Imamate was probably towards 2011 when I first started as a part-time Imam in a mosque in Bangor. So I started, and alhamdulillah, I started to like it. I got to know it, and I got to know the people. It was a very mixed community. So that was the first sort of instance and the first sort of experience as an imam, because I used to do Tarawih from the age of 16 when I finished. So 1996 up till this year I've been doing Tarawih every year, mostly in the mosque in Bangor, but recently obviously the mosque that I am at the moment at Neely Masjid. So Imamate was not a career goal. I think I was just I managed to just slip into this role somehow or the other. Alhamdulillah, I'm grateful to Allah that He has put me in a very, very important role. and I ask Allah to accept it and allow me to better myself and better the community around me, and give the rights to the role, because it is really a big responsibility on any imam's shoulder, if he takes it,
We'll actually get to that part as well in a bit, because I really want to I've got a few kind of questions about that. But just before that, what kind of led you to kind of go down the route of seeking knowledge? So why did you think, I want to go study Islamic knowledge, and I want to become an alim, or I want to have some sort of base or foundation of why should I pursue the path of the talib al-ilm?
Yeah, I think the realization when you're a 10, 12-year-old kid, the importance maybe of ilm is not there. But when you have parents who would like you to take that path, it does help. And I think my dad was really instrumental in that. He was the one who pushed me, and he encouraged me to go and learn hifz, learn the Quran. And I think when you have that backing from an early age, it does help a lot. Because a kid of 10, 11, what does he know? What does he want to do in life? So I think my parents, the dua of the parents was really number one, and the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, without doubt. I think the realization probably came later on. That's why I think adults, the age of 18, 19, that is when they realize what they want to do in life and how they want to better themselves. So myself, I was a late, I'd say late student.
A late bloomer.
Late bloomer, yeah.
What's a late bloomer?
You know what a late bloomer is?
Is it a flower that blossoms later? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Apparently, they're supposed to be the most beautiful flowers.
Allahu Akbar. He's
the
only saying it because he's here.
So that's why you smell very nice.
Allah. No, the smell is this. I'll show you the. We can put some on as well for the brothers.
Oh wow.
This is called silver. It's actually called silver as well.
Imam carries silver in his pocket.
So that was really the ilm. And I think until you actually realize it yourself.
That's nice.
What you want to do in life. There's no point, the parents forcing their children either way or the other. It has to come from yourself. And I think when I met Sheikh Akram, that was really the eye-opener. I still have that connection with him. He was one of the early, sort of the latest sort of teacher in my life, along with Sheikh Abdullah Yusuf al-Judai, an Arab scholar from Leeds. So when you have these role models in your life, it does make a big difference, rather than just going through the process, going to madrasa, learning sarf nahu, without even understanding what you're going to get at the end of it. Because alhamdulillah, in the UK we have many madaris, and there are many ulama which are becoming graduated from the madaris, but the question is, what are they? How are they looked at in society, and how are they benefiting the society? That's something we are still discussing in our groups as ulamas, as scholars, that what is the real role of an alim, of an imam, and how we could help them in their achieving of really that that is responsibility which they have on the shoulders. So I think the main thing is with any field is that you must be passionate about it. You must have the courage to take this path, and not to think that I'm only doing it for a year, 2 years, 3 years. You're doing it throughout your life, so there's no end to it.
So a lot of times when young adults or teenagers go to their parents and say they want to pursue a path of knowledge, or they want to become talib al-ilm, they're turned away because of earnings, because of it's not a stable career. How are you going to fund your life? How are you going to have a family? How are you going to support your wife? If you don't have money, how are you going to get a wife? How did you personally combat that? Because it is a very big issue. And
it is a big problem. Even today we had a discussion on the WhatsApp.
Sorry, that's my phone just going off. Crazy.
On the WhatsApp.
Professionalism.
I forgot it was.
Mine's on silent anyway.
Exactly.
So the discussion is still there in regards to a decent pay for an imam or a scholar. So really, I was lucky because I had my dad. Alhamdulillah, may Allah bless him. He was supporting me, and then when I got to the age of say 23. I started my own business. I was self-supporting myself throughout those years, so I wasn't relying on the imamate as a wage, as a salary, until I came here. When I closed down the business and I decided I'm going to do it full time, because to do it part time, I didn't feel that I was giving it justice, because it has to be done with passion, with zeal. So this is still a problem. The remuneration of our imams, they are paid basically nothing. For the responsibility which they have, which in result has left us with a situation that we are seeing in front of us, where the imams They don't take their job as serious as they should do. The respect is not there for the imams.
Or maybe,
yes,
just to put this out there, maybe the imams somehow kind of they ask for respect. However, their job is not being done properly, so people don't respect them. Now, you have to understand that people work in different ways. If an imam's not being respected, you can't just assume that the community is rotten. You have to sometimes look at the imam and think, you know what, are you taking your responsibility seriously? A lot of mosques, what happens is the imam will expect respect off the bat. He will come in and he'll expect people to go, oh, Imam Sahib.
I mean, so on that, so that's one question which I wanted to ask. You mentioned, for example, of course, that, you know, to have the seriousness when it comes to going on this journey and trying to be committed, and of course, inshallah, like we do hope that that the ulama are the inheritors of the Prophet, and so what does that actually mean in terms of responsibility? So, because it sounds like a very heavy kind of a burden when you say that the ulama are the inheritors of the Prophets. So what is like the responsibility of an imam, and why is it such a grand position that first and foremost people who are currently imams shouldn't abuse this power of, and secondly people who are within the community should respect the imam of, basically?
I think traditionally, if you go back, in the time of maybe later on from the companions, the time of Abu Hanifa, for instance, or Malik, rahimahullah, these were scholars who would, do what they were doing, i.e. teaching, learning, out of sheer love for the deen. And they never looked at the wage or the salary as something which, attracted them. And people would respect them naturally, through their God consciousness, through their taqwa, through their behavior with people. So for first instance, I mean, Imam shouldn't expect, automatically that he's going to be respected or he's going to be liked. People might not like him, maybe his character is different, his personality is problematic. But I think the Imam, the main thing that we gather from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, al-ulama warathul anbiya, is that the same way the anbiya, their job was to call to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the guidance of the prophets. That is really the main fundamental job of the imam, is to call the people to worship, lead them in worship, and also be sincere in that. And I think that's probably one of the main things is that we have to have that sincerity, that we're not doing it for any fame or any other sort of gain in this life, rather we're doing it for the hereafter. But as well, the community have a responsibility, like it was in the time of the scholars in the past, that they look after the imams in whichever way they can. Like we have the typical example of the churches, for instance, where they are provided with accommodation, they are looked after, the family is provided for, so they don't have that burden of having to go and look for work. So I think the problem arises when an alim, an imam, has to go work part-time somewhere else. So I wouldn't say he's degrading himself, but I'd say he's not giving his 100% in the field which he is supposed to be the specialist in, i.e. advising the youth, advising our sisters, advising our brothers, coming up with solutions to problems of our time, being there for the community whenever they need you, because people could walk in at any time to the masjid, and making sure that they have solutions. Maybe if it doesn't have to be solutions for everything, but solution for most of the problems that we are facing with. So I think that there has been that gap between the community and the imam, because what we typically think of the imam is that he's there for the salat and that's it, he's gone. He'll be there for the Friday, he'll be gone. If you try to speak to him, no, he's in a rush, because he's either going to have to go and teach somewhere, he's either have to go and do something else outside the masjid. So his time is mostly spent outside. So I think that the gap has been created over time. Maybe the Indo-subcontinent sort of culture that came with it, that how they would look at the imam, maybe very similar to how the Christians or the Jews look at their rabbis and priests. There's a fundamental difference between an imam and a priest, for instance. The role of an imam is more connected with the congregation, with the people, and also, as we know, the imams have the responsibility of leading, being leaders. So when the imams become employees and become obviously listeners, and they have to obey the orders of, for instance, the committees, then that becomes a conflict of interest, because the imam might have some ideas, some plan for the masjid, but the committee might not support it, they might not want it, they might want to hold on to that sort of, I'd say, like a power, or they would want to have that control over any sort of ideas that come within the community, or any sort of problem that might arise within they want to have that responsibility.
The thing is, like, perhaps this is probably thinking with the same kind of hat as our kind of parents' generation. But what would you say to people, for example, who, when it comes to like positions of imams, and they say that the only thing that imams do nowadays is basically they eat people's monies. They don't need to work. There are other examples, especially in the East, of imams being people who are leading salah who've got like proper jobs, like people who've got like engineering degrees or accounting degrees, and so there is no need for a full-time imam in that regards. And because I guess this is directly applicable to you as well, because you had that experience as a part-time imam and then you moved to full-time. So what would you say, like, how would you kind of go on about those people? It's
similar to, for instance, we have a doctor, a GP, and you say to him, okay, you do part-time GP and you do something else, maybe you drive a taxi. It's not going to work for him. That's not his field. So when you become an imam or a scholar or I'd say a student of knowledge, you're in that field. And it's when you try to mix the sort of the fields that you're in and mix the sort of subjects that you're in, I think that's where the problem has arisen. That seriousness is not there.
Do you think that students of knowledge can become students or be students of knowledge without being imams?
Yes.
Without committing to full-time positions as imams or community leaders or teachers? They can do, can't they?
They can do, definitely.
It's the decision of the person. Whether they want to become an imam or work full-time. And when the decision is made, you're saying that we should either go 100% or we should do nothing. Yeah, that's agreeable.
Yeah. But I think students of knowledge, just on that point, anybody can become a student. I mean, I'm still a student of knowledge, but the role slightly changes when you become an imam or when you become a da'i or a preacher or somebody who has some sort of say in community. But every one of us should be students of knowledge. Every one of us. We should be studying the Islam. But I think things become a bit hazy, a bit confused, and I like an example one of our brothers gave a few months ago, that if people start to swap lanes and you don't stay in your lane, so imam, scholar, alim, student of knowledge, doctor, engineer, I mean, you cannot expect a doctor to talk about fiqh as well as maybe an alim or a scholar, and the same vice versa. You can't go to an alim and say to him, I've got a headache today, prescribe you some medication. He's going to say no, even though sometimes you do try to prescribe some herbal medicine, but that's not what you do. That's not your line, is it? That's not your lane. So I think
idle kursi on that.
Yeah, you do ruqya, which again is another topic for another day, maybe. I mean, and I would say yes. Let's be honest. The position of imamate has, sometimes does get abused. The power, people get maybe too arrogant. They think, that's it, it's me or no one else. That is an issue. Which
I think we've seen that mostly. Correct me if I'm wrong. We've seen that mostly in the subcontinent in terms of the abuse of power. If you look at the Arab countries, even though they have their fair share of plights, the issue with the imam becoming a figure which is kind of the centre of personality worship. Worship in the sense that we worship Allah, but in terms of we kind of cling to this personality because it's kind of relatable to us, and then we start doing more things and we slowly creep, and that's when we bring ourselves outside the fold. So we have imams in the subcontinent who are praised because of their forefathers, because their fathers or their grandfathers were scholars, and automatically since birth they had the right to be a scholar. And you can ask them a question and they won't know anything, but they will still be seen as that because of the blood. The blood's a big thing in the subcontinent, which again, what do you think about that? So
inherit, so the ulama who inherit from their parents or children, again, the ilm is something which is kasbi. The ilm of deen, of the sharia is something which you don't just receive through inheritance or you receive from birth. It's something which has to be earned. So there's two types of knowledge. One is knowledge which is everyone has. The knowledge that Allah is one, that the sky is blue. But there's knowledge which is seeked and earned. That is the ilm of deen of sharia, of Islam. So just to say that you're born in a family which is pious family, unless you've had that tarbiyah, that proper engagement with knowledge, it's not going to come naturally. You have to have some sort of sequence which you go through the basics. There are 7 conditions of an alim which he has to go through these processes, like Arabic language, Quran, tafsir. These are the basics which you should know of, and you cannot just guess or think that I know this is what might be the right answer. And there's a hadith which the Prophet mentioned that towards the end of times there will be ulama who will be the worst of people. Who will sell their deen for a small amount. This is the danger. For instance, if the alim is left to look for his own sort of wage or his own salary, then he will do things to please people because they're the ones who are feeding him.
Well, we're seeing that now in the UK.
This is a problem.
Yeah.
This is why I have a policy. If anybody wants to give money to the masjid, I keep away from it. I say, you go straight to the office. Don't give me anything. You don't even, I don't want to deal with money because I think there's always going to be a problem. And one of the scholars, I think it was Imam Abu Hanifa, he mentions, and this is why he was really against taking a role or taking that responsibility of a Qadi al-Quba. Even though his student, Qadi Abu Yusuf, he took the role, he said, I don't want to be on the payroll of this government, because if there's something which comes along that I have to give a fatwa against them, I won't be able to say anything. So his hands will be tied, and also his speech will be blocked as well.
I think on that topic as well, I think this is like a brief diversion before I actually ask my next question, which is that, I think because of that, we have seen, historically speaking, within this Islamic Caliphate, that the religious or the religious judiciary system would always be in a way separate from the government, I guess, simply to make sure that there was not that conflict of interest. Anywho, sorry for that kind of diversion. So you briefly mentioned a bit about community and trust. So you mentioned how the imam, the job of an imam, how it entailed being around the community, of course, and being ready to receive anybody walking through the doors of a mosque. What would you say? Would you say at the moment over here today that there is a problem with trust within the community, basically, would you say that at the moment of time there is a massive disconnect between imams and the local communities, and would you say that's perhaps attributable? You could attribute this issue to some of the imams of the earlier generation who perhaps may have been guilty of such actions that as we just talked about, that could have actually created a rift.
Yeah, I'd say definitely there's in the early generation, maybe where your community was speaking Urdu, Pashto, Punjabi, there wasn't any problem with communications. But what we see now is there's definitely a lack of communication. The khutbah or the bayan is done in Urdu or Bangla or Pashto. The youngsters don't know what's going on. They have no connection with the masjid. That's why the first priority is to have some sort of English-speaking imam in a masjid for at least, so that he can remind the congregation. The mistrust has probably come from many issues. I think one of the issues that we have is that imams sometimes they are seen to be people that are quite sort of strict in their ways, quite firm. Back in the days, they used to use a bit of danda and stuff like that. So maybe that's frightening. Nowadays, it's
translation. What does
danda stick,
stick,
a broom.
Funny enough,
the bamboo.
I remember in primary school.
You got hit with the danda in primary school?
No.
Which primary school was that?
I went to a state primary school, so no, it was white. But it was. Having said that, it was white, but it was all full of Bengalis anyways, because I'm from Tahamnats. But anywho, so we had this kind of class for some few of us, away from the rest. Some would say it's because we were the clever lots. Anywho,
I don't think anyone would say that.
Actually, funny enough, we were going through some Shakespeare stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
What year was this?
Sheikh Zubair.
Sheikh Zubair.
He's Muslim.
But yeah, so this one time in year 6, we were literally telling our teachers, because like I said, majority of us were Muslims, Bengali, although I'm Pakistani, just to make that very clear again.
It's fine. You look both, so it's okay. You look Bengali and Pakistani. You get away with it, don't worry.
We bully him, say he's Bengali. Well, not like Bengalis, like being Bengali, but you're the one who takes offense.
We're alienating a whole demographic of our listeners.
Guys, I say to him, oh, you look Bengali, and he takes it as offence. Who's the one alienating? Think about it that way.
Anywho, the point of the story was, so there's about 6 of us, and we were like just telling our teachers about what goes on in the madrasas. And the teacher was like, he was absolutely gobsmacked. Like, we'd tell him things, and then he'd like think, what is this sick behavior? What is this like Victorian time kind of behavior? Alhamdulillah, like the teacher himself is now accepted Islam. He's a Muslim. And,
very good.
Serious?
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Primary school teacher became Muslim. I know, sick. It was amazing. I randomly used to see him for Fajr Salah. Like,
he's probably into the beatings, isn't he?
Literally, I bumped into him in like Fajr Salah, like when I was in college, and I'm like, oh Mark, assalamu alaikum. He's like, wa alaikum salam. I'm like, it felt so nice. Anywho, going back to that whole thing came back from Danda.
It's something that happened. I mean, there was the fear of the madrasa teacher or the imam, especially the imam. He was notoriously known to have the sort of the harshest stick or the heaviest stick. I think that's all changed now. I mean, nowadays you cannot do that.
But do you think that the education of the children nowadays has significantly changed for the better or for the worse?
The Islamic education or the
Islamic education and the character development that you go through in a masjid.
Yes, so I'd say the maktab has probably remained the same. There's not much changed on that side, apart from having new material in English, new syllabuses, new teachers. But what's probably lacking, and I don't know, maybe you'd agree, but the spirituality aspect of things is still lacking in our. It's become academic. So I think we need to have a balance of the both of having.
In what way do you mean academic?
I think more character building of our kids. We need to make them confident Muslims for one, and then maybe the academic will come with that.
I think there's a big kind of understanding with the youth that Islam is it's an academic subject, books, Quran books, and it's not about it's a lifestyle though, isn't it? It's a lifestyle that we have to.
This is something which myself, when I was in first year of uni, I was teaching the maktab for a bit, and then the class that I had, I really, alhamdulillah, I was very blessed to have a smaller class compared to other teachers. It was only about 10 to 15 people, and I think that's probably one problem, I guess, if you ever get to that kind of problem in terms of the size of the classes.
Uni students.
No, maktab.
You were teaching kids.
Yes, I was teaching kids. Yeah, you know how you have a part-time job in in uni, and like it was one of those ones.
I don't know about that one, but yes.
So I was teaching for a bit, and then basically, so alhamdulillah, I built a rapport with all of my kids, and it was really nice. I was really invested in them, and as a result, progression in terms of like the syllabus was quite slow. And I got pulled aside by the head teacher once, saying, "Look,
what are you doing here?
I appreciate that the kids like you, but we've got a syllabus, and the parents are getting tired of you, basically." And then I was like, "Look, I can either carry on teaching and let them learn, and it will be slower, or I can just let them not learn and just for the sake of their parents just tick box." And that, for me that was like one big moment where I just felt like I'm gonna like just leave.
I taught at the masjid as well for a while, so I'd help the imam with the Quran class, and what you'd learn is that because there were the class is divided in two, so you have the teenagers in one and the very young children in the other, and what you'd have is the children who were coming to the class to learn Quran, coming from either learning the alphabets, etc., and the grammatical rules. They never learnt the actual rules. So when they're reading the Quran, when they've actually come to the book now, they're making a lot of mistakes. And what you see is that these mistakes are not very easy to kind of, I'm not going to say beat out of them, but kind of like drain out of them, because it's ingrained in them now. Your children are very impressionable, so when they're told something once, they'll believe that until something better comes along. And if something better comes along, if it's too hard, they'll just go back to the first option.
Yeah, there was a discussion online about this, that the 5-day madrasa, is it working? Is it doable for parents because they're in school 6 hours a day and 2 hours in madrasa? I mean, are we really benefiting them in any way? And the focus needs to go back to the character of the individual and how we build him or build her to be a good Muslim, good Muslimah. Yeah, she couldn't have the best of education in terms of results, but her akhlaq or his akhlaq might be completely terrible, might be the opposite. So I think the focus needs to go back to the time of the Prophet ﷺ, where he used to concentrate on the individual, teach him small bits, not teach him books after books after books. You have to be taught small bits, based on his ability, and again, that's going back to the needs of the individual, because a class of 10, he might have different capabilities, different abilities, and that's why it's important as a teacher to look at that and not care about you've got exams or you've got a syllabus that you need to finish. No, that shouldn't be our concern as a masjid, as a maktab. Islamic deen, the religion, or the sciences of Islam is different to the normal sciences that we know of, like for instance the maths and the English. They have different reasons. We have different sort of goals in our lives that we want to try and achieve, especially for our youth. And again, the challenges which they're facing in school, it's not going to be addressed with books. The issues that they have in the syllabuses, in primary, in secondary, books are not going to help them. It's actually their character, their confidence, how much of their spirituality they're working on. The parents again have a big responsibility. Our parents, unfortunately, become lazy. They send them to the Imam Sahib or to the madrasa expecting miracles. It has to be a two-way sort of combination work between the parents and the teachers. So I'd say, we need to move away from expectations that we're going to finish this syllabus within a year or 2 years. It's good to have something there that that at least if a teacher's missing, somebody else can cover for them. But that shouldn't be our goal. That shouldn't be our main focus.
Do you think that applies to hifz as well? So around the world, you have people who are huffaz, but they don't understand what they're reading. And that's because they've memorized the Quran in 6 months, 7 months. 8 months, sometimes 9 months, 12 months. And that happens when they're very young because they're told by their parents, or they're pushed by their parents to do it. And they didn't go that step further to learn the Arabic language, to learn what they're actually reading about. Is that valuable? It is valuable because you have the Quran rewards, in you. But in terms of the rewards that were meant to be kind of reaped from a Hafid, he was supposed to be the gem of the community. He was supposed to be the one that carried the Quran on his shoulders, so everyone can ask him a question. He'd pull ayats out. But now it's basically who's got the nice voice.
Definitely, he will get the reward, or she will get the reward for the citation of the Quran if his intention is clear. Unfortunately, we are faced with situations where the Hufad or the Qadis, Allah knows what's in their hearts. But it should never be doing it for the worldly gains. That's number one.
I think it's more to do with the system that pumps them out.
Yes, and that is probably part of the issue, that why we have so much demand from the Hufaz, from the Qadis, and they're actually forced into it. They're forced into providing Hufaz who have beautiful voices, who have good tajweed, but maybe their heart's not in the right place. Maybe the passion is not there, the interest is not there. That let's learn about the Quran. What does the Quran say? This was a typical problem. Even it still is in Indo-Pak Madaris, where they'd go through the whole syllabus, but yet when you ask them about the Quran, they will probably pull out a book of fiqh and maybe quote something from the fiqh rather from the Quran. So that the concentration or the importance of the Quran has been taken away. Due to this fear that this is an alien language to us, we need to be careful, we don't want to open it, we don't want to read it, and that sort of the tradition of thinking or pondering has left a lot of our schools, a lot of our seminaries around the UK, around the globe, I'd say. Even in the Arab world, we have good seminaries, like for instance Azhar, we have Medina, we have good places where people can go to study. But again, the focus is more on the maqasid of Sharia. Okay, you're going to go to a certain country. How are you going to deal with this problem? How are you going to debate with people? So the objectives have changed. Rather than focus in the Quran to better yourself as an individual, has moved, has changed. So that is a big problem. That's something that we need to try to realign and bring back into our youth. That this is the main focus.
Going back to the community kind of issue, or the connection, or the lack of connection between the community and the mosque. I think we briefly talked about young people and the interactions with the mosque.
Talked a word.
What did I say?
We spoke about
No, you talked is a word as well.
Talked a word.
Talked talked.
Yeah, it's a word, bro.
I think it is. Yeah,
it is a word. It is a word.
I think it's making it up.
We talked about something.
We talked about.
Yeah.
Have you talked yet?
Have you
maybe,
talked? Yeah.
It's a word.
Okay, I'll give you that.
Listen, I know I was engineered before, but now I am doing public policy. I speak English now.
Master Sab.
Because basically, so undergrad I did in engineering, and now I'm doing masters in public policy.
Career switch, big career switch.
Good.
There's another story behind that. I think I actually mentioned the story in the previous episode. So the listeners who are out there, you can, if you're interested about that journey, go ahead. But anyway, I was going to say, sorry. So we spoke about. I said spoke this time.
We spoke about,
So we spoke about how we can help the younger generation better in terms of how we can improve the maktabs and I guess the early thoughts about the masjid and the imams. But what about for like the later generation? Someone who's already got this mindset that imams are strict and they're judgmental and they. He doesn't speak English properly anyway. If I tell him I'm depressed, he's just going to say it's because there's no Quran in you. I need to read more Quran. Or if I go up to him and say that, look, I'm having urges of
sexual desires,
sexual desires, or I'm having, or I'm going through a problem where I'm financially very weak and I'm thinking about taking out a loan or something like that. So a person of this kind of background, like how can imams be more approachable, or how can the mosque itself be change itself so that a person from this kind of background is willing to come to the masjid to speak about their problems?
That would start from a root level, no? So talking about how you develop children, you develop them.
Okay, but like we've gone past that. Like,
but I think...
So about people today?
Yeah, so my personal opinion is that people today who have gone past them stages where they have preconceived notions of the imam or conceived from experiences, they can't... I don't think the imam should be the point of contact for them in terms of reconnecting with their deen, because there's for a lot of people, I've met a lot of people, I know a lot of people who have been for example sexually assaulted by imams. It happens unfortunately in the Muslim community. It's not only the Catholics, is it? I don't know, I smiled.
It's very common.
It's very and so going to an imam for advice on deen or for advice on life matters in general would be difficult for them. It doesn't matter what imam it is, because for them that experience kind of ingrained in them what an imam was for them. So you have da'is, or you have teachers in the local communities, or people who are on deen, like you said nowadays, you're on deen, the brothers on deen, people who are knowledgeable. I think for them the best point of contact is these people.
I think there's two points to it really. I mean, the latter generation who are probably have these ideas about imams, there's really a responsibility upon the masajid as well, because alhamdulillah within the UK we have a big pool of imams, of qualified scholars who can actually fill that role of an imam. But what we are seeing, one of the biggest hurdles of employing an imam is obviously the condition of pay, the expected hours from the imam, etc. So they are keeping away. So we have good sort of ulama scholars who probably wouldn't take the responsibility of an imam due to basic pay, etc. So I think if a masjid is struggling at the moment, they need to make use of whatever specialists they have within the community. Maybe they have doctors, they have social workers. So the imam has to use them or work with them in a way which benefits the society and the community. If they're unable to employ an imam, for instance, then that's one way they can probably resolve this issue. But again, not to ignore it, because I tell you what the biggest problem is, you probably know about this, is we have a big number of youth, 16 to 25-year-olds who are leaving this religion. I don't know if you've done a program about this, about the murtadeens.
Oh, no, we have. We touched on it briefly.
You could talk about, because the numbers are scary. I mean, the least amount, the minimum number I've heard of is 2,000 to 3,000 per year. And the maximum I've heard is 10,000 per year. So I think that's probably...
Bear in mind, a lot of these people do leave in secret as well, so they don't tell their parents.
I think with the leaving issue, so with the murtads and the whole thing with apostating, is that we came to this country, so we're third gen, second gen,
even fourth, maybe even fourth.
Yeah, even fourth sometimes.
If you're thaqib, first gen.
If you're thaqib, 1.5 gen. But you come to this country, so your grandfathers or your forefathers came to this country to kind of build a better life and to kind of keep their Pakistaniness or their Indianness or Bengaliness within their community. So they'd form little silos where they'd work together. You'd have a group working for the same cause, but it's Pakistani, UKM, and then you have another group working for the same cause, which is Arab, MAB.
Yeah.
And you'd have these little cliques forming all over the country. And then over time, what you'll have is inevitable integration within society, because you're living in the society of 4 generations now. Your children have become inherently British. They haven't got the same ideas as you because they didn't come from Pakistan. And the second generation comes, and then the third generation comes, and it comes to the fourth then. And what happens is the anchor that was weighing down the first and second generations to their deen or to their kind of cultural identity had disappeared. A lot of people nowadays, I'm not equating Pakistan to Islam, but it's an Islamic society more so than the UK. You will have norms and practice there that you won't have practice here. So you'll have kids here who have no identity whatsoever. You ask them what they are, they say we're British. Have you been back? No. Have you been to Umrah? Have you? No.
Yeah.
Do your parents teach you about the deen? No.
I think we need to obviously not forget about the culture aspect of it, but we need to let go of it to some extent, especially when it comes to the...
I think we need to let go. I was using an example, but I think culture, for example, is one of them things where you do not completely abandon it because it gives you identity in a crowd of millions. However, we have to make sure that it doesn't govern our instincts. The only thing that does is Islam. Because it's the only objective moral code that we can live by. And if we do not live by that, then we start seeing other issues.
Yeah, and I think that the issue comes when there's a practice which is culturally acceptable, but maybe with this, to do with this, it has nothing to do with Islam. And that's causing a lot of confusion, amongst the youngsters, amongst our sisters as well. Issues of marital problems, children, divorce, all these are issues which are obviously, causing, a lot of the muqtadins or those who leave the Islam. We have new Muslims who come to this religion. That's again 3,000-4,000 per year in the UK. But we need to really rethink our strategy, our policy. That we are Muslims. Alhamdulillah, we're living in this country. And like I was saying yesterday to a group of youngsters, that we hate to stay. No one's going to go back to Pakistan or to Bangladesh.
I do.
Maybe inshallah.
I want to retire there.
You've only been there once.
I've only been there once when I was younger.
He wants to go back to retire.
But I want to retire somewhere where I'd be able to love the land.
I think that is something which our parents had. I mean, as the third generation, we should still love our motherland. But again, when we focus too much on Pakistan, Bangladesh, and sending everything back there, we've sacrificed a lot, especially our children. The education, the tarbiyah, maybe having institutes within the UK where they could actually help our youngsters. Just drop-in centres, for instance, or madaris, good madaris. So
Abdul Sami asked me a question outside, which is probably relevant now.
Yeah.
He goes, would it be an obligation upon third gen or fourth gen subcontinental
parents?
No, children.
Children.
To contribute to the economies of their home countries?
As in their motherlands. Of course, yeah. I mean, this is, there's a saying, it's not a hadith. Hubbul watan min al-iman. That love for your motherland or where your parents were born is also part of your iman. Not in a nationalist sort of frame of work. It is something which you love. Yes, if you can send money to your relations, for instance, that's from Islam.
Apart from relations, like people send money to their family all the time.
Yeah.
But the economy.
Yes, if it's if it's some business that you can do, if you can invest there, why not? I mean, people from the UK invest in Australia, in America. No one says to them, "Oh, you can't invest in those countries," because it is a business. You're doing it because of the love of the country. But again, not to mix the two. That religion is there. Alhamdulillah, I'm doing it because of the love of the land. Yes, I don't know if you've seen the podcast by Sheikh Haytham a few days ago about Pakistan.
Yeah.
It was really a beautiful reminder that he gave that Pakistan is Pakistan. We love Pakistan. I love Pakistan. But again, not to make it a tribalism or nationalism thing, and not to hate people because they're from Bangladesh, or Asabi is not from Islam anyway. But I think there's no harm. You could invest. You invest where you see some profit in the near future. Business is also something which is made halal for us, as long as there's no riba, there's no interest, there's no deceiving of people, there's no bribery. As long as you know that where you invest your money, inshallah you'll get a return, or you might lose money, but at least you've tried your best. So I think we're not saying forget about your identity, but your main identity in the UK is you're a British Muslim. Alhamdulillah, you should be proud of that. You shouldn't think that, oh, am I British?
What's the identity then? What exactly is a British Muslim? What makes someone a British Muslim?
So you're a Muslim who lives in Britain. You're part of the society. You give to the society, and again, you keep your religion as well. No one's telling you that don't pray, don't practice your religion. Just like the Jews, for instance, are living within the UK, or the Christians. No one's telling them that you cannot be a Muslim, or you cannot be a Jew, you cannot be a Christian.
Yeah, but this term British Muslim has only come for the Muslims. You never hear the word British Jews, British Christians, British Buddhists, British Hindus, British Sikhs. I think it's more of a, what does the British mean? Does the British mean our mannerisms, the way we talk, the accents we have, the slang we use, the food we eat? Okay, if that's British, fair enough.
Yeah.
However, if we use the word British to basically kind of align ourselves with the ideology of the society, so Britishness, to what is, if you ask an Anglo, what is it to what does it mean to be British?
The thing is, so on that discussion, which is I think a topic for another day, but because we had this discussion once in class about like even British values, which only came about like a couple of years ago. The thing is, if you were to define it, for example, defining British values, okay, you're going to say, okay, tolerance, open-minded, accepting of all people,
respect,
but this is all human values anyway.
These are not human values; these are liberal values. These are so tolerance. The word tolerance is used for tolerating an ideology which is you believe is wrong because you believe yours is right. So you tolerate that.
Yeah,
and the way you tolerate is either you don't do anything about it, or you kind of protect you protect the ideology in its essence, so you don't allow any critique against it, etc. However, does Islam say that we tolerate? This is the real question. Devil's advocate, like I said.
So there's tolerance, there's acceptance. So there's a difference in the two.
It's a very kind of blurry line, and when a lot of people say, we tolerate and we tolerate, and
I think it's changed as well. British values from say 20 years ago might have changed recently. They're continuously tweaking it and they're changing.
That's the issue with subjective morality. 50 years ago in the UK, you could see a speech of Margaret Thatcher at the Conservative Convention saying, "I don't want a gay person reading to my children in the school, etc., etc." Like homo bashing was a big thing for the parties, the political parties, on the main stage. But now it's changed. But now it's changed.
I think going back to the notion of British Muslims, it's not necessarily about that. It's more about the fact that. When you're, as Sheikh said that when you're when you're part of the society, your contribution is to society in general. As a Muslim, our goal is to make sure that we're benefiting people as a whole, whether it be in an area of like in your own field, whether it be in medicine that you're trying to do research and provide the best medicines out there, or if it's in engineering, or if it's in education, or if it's even in policy or government. And of course, before you bring out the arguments of democracy is haram.
That is an argument which brothers really sometimes.
But anywho,
what do you think about the argument?
So democracy,
we've got like
we want to hear this. What do you think about the argument?
So the democracy that we see, obviously, if the Hakimiyya belongs to anyone except Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, that is categorically clear. But what the ulama they say. When you have the option of A and B, and maybe A is probably lesser of the evil, you go for A.
So lesser two evils.
Yeah. So I think we are not in that position where we can actually give fatwa on democracy, because we ourselves are a minority. But alhamdulillah, we try our best to get those policies in place which will benefit the Muslims, and that's why when it comes to the issue of voting. SubhanAllah, people are still debating this, that should we vote, should we not vote, is it halal, is it haram?
I think a lot, so in the past the debate about voting was initially down to whether or not voting for anything other than Allah's law was haram, but I think now, recently, the contemporary arguments being used are, do the Muslims actually have enough weight to swing major votes?
They do.
And the Muslim Council of Britain, the last election came out, and they came out with this the statistics about how if Muslims vote in certain swing areas, then they can kind of change the vote. Which didn't work because they didn't account for the fact that a lot of people don't vote.
Yeah, that is a big problem. Yeah.
So if a lot of people don't vote in the first place,
it's not going to swing anywhere.
It's very it's not going to swing anywhere, is it? It's hypothetical. So
but Muslims don't vote. This is a big problem. I mean, I think out of the total population of Muslims, would you say not even 50% vote? That's both male, female. So there is still that suspicion in the minds of Muslims that voting is haram and we cannot vote. It's Hakimiyya. Don't forget the Hakim issue was one of the first arguments of the Khawarij back in the days of Uthman radiallahu ta'ala, that they came up with this. This was their argument, and this was one of the reasons why they actually rebelled and went away from Uthman and Ali and made their own camp. So I think we need to really discuss it properly and look into it deeply.
Because I think these are the issues that if we want to be called British Muslims, for example, and we want to instill this into our youth that we're British Muslims and that we have these British values but we still maintain our Muslim identity, then voting is a big part of that. And if we can't get a clear consensus on the issue, then how can we be clear on our identity as British Muslims?
I think the problem started back in maybe the 80s, 90s. I mean, the contemporary scholars, for instance, like Sheikh Haytham.
Yeah, Sheikh Haytham says this.
And Sheikh Akram and Sheikh Abdullah Yusuf al-Juday. These are contemporary scholars who have deep thoughts. So they've come out and they've made it clear that yes, there are some aspects within the society who may think that we're not part of this. This is where the problem starts: is that we are being oppressed. We cannot do anything. We cannot change our situation. We just have to leave things in the hands of others.
Do you think that's defeatist?
That is defeat. That is definitely defeatist. We shouldn't be defeated. We should always be positive, and we should always think, yes, whatever's happening around the world, whether we have been oppressed, whether we've been killed, we still have to do our job, our work. Never give up.
I think this kind of comes down to the point of when you were mentioning about everyone being in their lanes and have everyone excelling in their lanes. And I think one kind of field that's been very much neglected by Muslims because we haven't engaged at all in this area is politics and political activism.
Yeah.
And I know that there's lots of concerns about it, and we should, of course, navigate ourselves wisely with the guidance of scholars, with guidance of even the community, because we want to make sure that ultimately we're doing this for the community as well. But because we haven't explored this, it's unfamiliar to us, and people, generally speaking, are afraid of the unknown. So I think that's the reason why they have a lot of disbelief within the whole kind of system, that all the system is against us, when they don't necessarily kind of go out and actually engage with the system to see what is the system like. So I think it's a topic for another day as well, inshallah.
Politics and democracy. But don't forget, Muslims they're still relatively new. They're in uncharted waters.
Yeah.
Because for many centuries, Muslims were in power. So these are just the last maybe 80, 90, 100 years which the Muslims have been away. They've not had a central sort of figure or an Amir or a Caliph. So it's taking time for them to find their way and to find some solutions to this problem.
What is the solution?
We'll be here till 12 o'clock.
But let's get some Hizbi brothers in the building.
Anywho, so what I was actually going to say, and maybe we'll wrap up on this, inshallah, is that you were mentioning how Imams had this notion of being strict and unapproachable. So how are you different, or how are you yourself personally so approachable, or are you the kind of Imam who goes out with the lads and plays basketball, or
we play cricket with these guys, inshallah.
He's a very good cricket player.
No.
Mashallah.
Is that true?
Yeah, he's actually
I try to play. To play, but I think the main thing with Imams is they need to be out there in the community. Never ever lock themselves away from the community, because that will really will harm the Imam himself and also the society. So you have to be like the Prophet ﷺ was with his companions. I mean, did he lock himself away from them? And he actually sat with them, and they couldn't even tell who the Prophet was sometimes, the way he was dressed, the way he sat with them, and they said to him. So that's how I think the Imams need to come out of their sort of box or their shell.
To make someone feel comfortable with approaching the Imam. They have to be one of a normal person. Approachable, they have to be friendly, they have to be one of the lads, essentially. If they're young, that is.
Well, even if they're
old, you can still be an old lad.
Even if you're old, if you're 50, but if you're approachable and you're somebody who's always smiling and who goes along with the sunnah of Prophet ﷺ, the way he dresses, the way he looks good, he looks smart, I think people will approach you and they'll talk to you.
Definitely.
I'm telling you, a lot of the problems that we see, like mental health issues and social issues, is because there's no talking. And even with not just with the Muslims, with the outer society, the outer community, we're not speaking to them, we're not talking to them. So it's really that, like I said in the beginning, it's a huge task and a huge responsibility upon the Imams, and they'll be asked about it on the Day of Judgment. What did you do to better your community, to guide them and to guide yourself, and how did you actually manage to fulfill this task? And we ask Allah to help us all, and to help the youth, and to help the brothers who are doing any work in the dawah field, that may Allah make their task easy, give them sincerity, and reward them abundantly in this world and in the hereafter as well, inshallah.
I think, it's
a perfect way to round up, isn't it?
Yeah, Jazakumullah khair. Mic drop already, yeah? But yeah, Jazakumullah khair for that. And I think, you're right. There definitely is a positive shift. I think we are seeing a lot more younger Imams coming in.
We have an organisation which most of them are English-speaking Imams. But I would say out of, just a figure, out of 100, maybe only 5 or 10 are doing Imamate. So that's just to give an idea. We have mashallah, a big pool, and usually when you ask them, brother or Imam, why are you not doing any work, it's the usual problems that they've had.
Do you think it's irresponsible for a masjid to have an Imam that doesn't speak English?
I think it's dangerous. I mean, I think it's something which the UK government will step in, and they will have to step in and make it a requirement that in Germany, for instance, the Imam must speak German. So no Imam is allowed to give a khutbah unless he can speak German. Same in other countries like, for instance, Denmark, Norway. There has to be. So again, they'll make it a requirement. And the problem we have in the UK, we don't have a central figure like a mufti, a grand mufti who will take. And the UK.
I don't think we'll have one.
No, the UK will not allow it. So it's in
even if we did have like an underground grand mufti or something, it wouldn't work.
They would never unite behind a central figure. Maybe.
Yeah, they wouldn't. No, we wouldn't. The Muslims in the UK.
In Germany, they have. I think it's Germany or Lithuania. They have a grand mufti, and they do actually follow his fatwas and his sort of law.
But that's the thing, we have to take into account the different
opinions,
opinions, etc.
But anywho, definitely. But I think generally there has been a change within some mosques anyway. I mean, like there's a mosque not too far away from my house in London where the Imam, his first name is Shakil. Shakil Beg. Okay, yeah, I wasn't gonna. Yeah, Imam Shakil Beg. Imam Shakil Beg. Yeah.
So he saying Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah, I was just about to say that he plays basketball regularly.
Oh, does he? He's a basketballer.
He's a basketballer. Yeah, and the brothers around him, they actually do call him Shaquille O'Neal. Yeah, and that's the thing. So
he might be listening, so
big shot.
True, exactly. Which is why I didn't want to say it was him. So yeah, I mean, like that's one example, and even like the new Imam of Eastern Mosque.
Mahmoud Mamdood.
Muhammad Mahmoud.
He was a previous Imam at Finsbury Park.
Yeah, so he was the hero Imam that was mentioned in the Finsbury Park attack. Yeah, and so he himself, mashallah, he uses the gym in the mosque as well, and mashallah, he meets a lot of friends over there, meets a lot of people over there. Good. He gets spotted by people over there, or he spots other people over there and stuff. And it's like these kind of touches where he's actually in society rather than thinking. So I think of course his khutbahs as well. I really love them, and I think some of my favorite khutbahs when I was have been when I was in university, when you had like the ISOC delivering. And when I'm at Eastern Mosque, when he's doing a khutbah, it feels like that ISOC kind of vibe, where he's delivering a khutbah. He's very, mashallah, very talented in public speaking. He's also talking about relevant issues and relevant topics and stuff. So I think
it's fanboying over here, aren't you?
Anywho, so generally, I mean, we are looking, inshallah, going towards a more positive direction, and inshallah,
I think change will come. Like with anything else, change will come with persistence and with patience. We shouldn't be impatient. We should always have sabr and have reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He will change things for the better as long as we're doing our bit.
Yeah.
Our small little bits that we are doing, alhamdulillah, it will work and it will benefit the community. So like Brother Asad mentioned, don't be pessimistic, be optimistic that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make things better for us, inshallah.
I said, did you say that?
Well, he said something along those lines.
Yeah, I'll take it, yeah. I did say that.
Don't be defeatists.
But yeah, chill, inshallah. So with that then, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. I think it's been slightly over an hour. However, it felt like...
edit it, inshallah.
It felt like 10 minutes. It felt like 10 minutes, genuinely. It's been a pleasure. And with that, guys, you know what to do. Share, like, subscribe.
Middle West PC on Twitter and Instagram.
What's the address again for my...
The Middle West PC.
Middle West PC.
Yeah, so our Twitter handle, or handle for everything is the Middle West PC. You can always email us as well. Email us if you have any kind of feedback. If you guys think that we should be, changing the format.
Oh, wait, no, Instagram is the Middle West Podcast. Sorry.
Okay, Instagram we're the Middle West Podcast, but on Twitter we're Middle West PC. Share, like, subscribe, and get the word out. And inshallah, see you guys next time.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.